Cooke Street. There was a young boy who got his cups outside. I don't know.
Outside of which number?
4758.
Sorry?
4758, I think.
Hi everybody, Matt and Danielle back with you. Hope you're okay. Today we're in Barking in Essex, and behind me is Cooke Street. In one of the flats in Cooke Street lived Stephen Port, who became known as the Grindr killer, and in that area took the lives of 4 innocent men. We're going to tell their story today because it is the 10th anniversary of the first victim this weekend, and we're going to head to the graveyard and we're going to pay our respects as we go. Let's see what we find when we cross the road. So 10 years ago, on 17th of June 2014, Anthony Walgate, a 23-year-old student fashion designer who came from Hull, he was also living in London, and alongside his budding career as a fashion designer, he also worked as a male escort, and he got a call to come here to Cooke Street. Sadly, that was the last anybody would see of Anthony Walgate until he appeared on the 19th, just in the doorway here, slumped against the wall. So a call came through to the police that there was a body slumped here, gave the announcement of the address, and then hung up. When they discovered Anthony's body, on him they discovered a small brown bottle of liquid. That liquid was the drug GHB, which became a symbol of the 4 victims in this case. Yeah, rest in peace, Anthony. GHB is usually found in small bottles, and it's known as a party drug and is often found across the nightclub scene. It is a colourless, odourless and salty tasting liquid mixed and swallowed with water. The drug can usually be found amongst the gay community as it increases confidence and sexual pleasure. Small amounts make you happy and horny, but too much and there's a risk to life. Barking and Dagenham Police, who deal with this investigation, decide there are no suspicious circumstances surrounding Anthony Walgate's death. The police, however, have tracked down the man who made the phone call. Getting a statement from him, he tells them that he lived in the flat where Anthony's body was found in the doorway as he'd arrived home from work, and he said he sat him up in the doorway before making the call. Later, though, this statement changes. The man's name is Stephen Port, and he says in his new statement that he knew Anthony and had been in the flat with him. Anthony had a profile on the Sleepy Boys website, so Port had hired him for £800 for the evening. Anthony had taken the GHB and become ill, and Port put him into bed after he'd been violently sick and left him there whilst he went to work. Returning home, he'd found Anthony dead and, panicking, moved him out into the street. The police still ruled the death an accident that warranted no further investigation. Port, aged 40, lived at 62 Cooke Street, and the police do charge him with perverting the course of justice for lying about not knowing Anthony Walgate. Port says he still doesn't know about Anthony's mobile phone location. The phone had been lost. Port is released on bail after the police take his DNA and his laptop. Importantly, neither of those things are ever checked. Socially awkward in real life, Port is a prolific profile on online dating apps, a way to meet people if you are socially awkward. Stephen used gay websites to track down what are commonly known as twinks, young men who look much younger than they are, usually quite slim and effeminate. Port's age limit on the sites was 23. Just behind the bushes there, you can't see it now because they've deliberately, I think, put that bush there to cover up the building. But that is where Stephen Port lived. We don't need to dwell here, it's not about him. So let's head to the churchyard. Okay, behind me is St Mary's Churchyard in Barking, and this was the scene of the next 3 lives that Stephen Port took in a bizarre set of circumstances that somehow saw the police actually not connect the dots at all as to what was going on. We're going to head into the graveyard. We're going to see if we can just spot the locations where the bodies were found. Again, we're not sensationalising anything here, we're just coming to pay our respects today. Gabriel Kavari is a 22-year-old Slovakian art student who comes over to England. Staying initially in a house with a man he'd met online, he then announces that he has a new flat to move into. He becomes the new flatmate of Stephen Port. Port eagerly messages his friend and neighbour to show off his new flatmate. Port's neighbour gets chatting to Kavari, and in a quiet moment alone, Kavari tells him that Port is not quite the person he portrays to his friend. Messages between Port and his friend see Port replying that he is taking good care of Kavari. But 3 days later, Kavari seemingly moves out. A concerned neighbour messages Stephen, who replies that he doesn't know where Gabriel has gone. But he later messages a reply to his friend to announce that Gabriel had gone home, picked up an illness, and then died. He also tells his neighbour to not say anything about it on Facebook. However, Kavari was not actually that far away. On the 28th of August 2014, a lady in the morning is walking her dog through the park, and on her way in she notices that there is a person slumped but sat upright against the wall there. She comes closer to ask how he is, and then realises that he's no longer here. The body there was 22-year-old Gabriel Kavari. The churchyard is only 400 yards from Cooke Street. And seemingly, Gabriel had died from an overdose of GHB. The police once again decide no suspicious circumstances. The local gay community do not know that they are suddenly now at threat of a killer targeting them. 18th of September 2014. The same dog walker comes through here on that morning. Can you believe it is possible that she saw another young man slumped against the wall here? This time the man had a bed sheet over his legs, and next to him what seemed to be a suicide note. Once again there was that bottle of empty GHB, and this was the body 21-year-old Daniel Whitworth. Daniel Whitworth was a 21-year-old grammar student, and he'd been announced missing on the 18th of September 2014. So in 3 months, 3 young gay men had died within a 400-yard stretch between the Cooke Street house and here. They'd all seemingly overdosed of GHB, and they took the suicide note at face value. The suicide note reading from Daniel himself, apparently being responsible for giving Gabriel GHB, overdosing him and bringing him here, and therefore Daniel couldn't live with it for apparently the next 3 weeks, whereas there was no sign that anything had happened, and he also ends up in the exact same location of an overdose. The same dog walker found 2 bodies. And the police just did not connect them. Why? Crazy. So the police investigation concludes again. The suicide note taken at face value, despite the 3 men in their 20s from the gay community dying in suspicious circumstances in a 400-yard area. No DNA testing is done, no phone records checked. The police say no further investigations will be made. On the 23rd of March 2015, Port pleads guilty to perverting the course of justice in regards to Anthony Walgate's death and moving his body, and he is given 4 months prison sentence. However, he is released on June the 4th, ready to strike again, as he is under no suspicion for any of the GHB deaths. And just 3 months later, another body is found. Now in September 2015, on that morning, the body of Jack Taylor, 25-year-old, is found slumped against the wall, once again in the upright position, literally opposite side of the wall to where Daniel and Gabriel were found. Once again, a small fluid bottle of GHB is found on his person. Once again, the police just rule it out as an overdose. Jack Taylor is a 25-year-old forklift truck driver, but with aspirations of potentially joining the police force. Although his body was officially found in a park, it is the back of the same wall of the other victims. Once again, found with GHB and also a needle mark in his arm, and his phone is missing. The family of Jack face the same scenario with the police: lack of info and communication. 11 days after Jack's death, his 2 sisters contact the police to see how they're doing with their investigation, and are absolutely appalled to find out that no investigation is taking place, that they've just once again ruled this out as an overdose. We now have, in a 16-month period, 4 gay young men passed away in very similar circumstances, and the alarm bells for the police are not ringing. The family of Anthony know that something is wrong. The neighbour who met and tried to save Gabriel Cavari from Stephen Port's clutches knew something was wrong, as did the person he initially moved there with. The partner of Daniel also knows something is wrong, and now the sisters know something is wrong. These people didn't take drugs. Jack especially was anti-drugs. Why would he be found there with GHB on his system? Yeah, fair enough, people do take things to get high and take things to relax. But overdosing it, such a small period of time, and in such a small space. No. So the two sisters track down the final movements of Jack and are very surprised when they are given CCTV footage to look at that shows Jack walking through Barking Centre with another much taller blonde man. And apparently the police have decided not to investigate who this person was because they believe Jack probably wandered off on his own at the end of the footage. So the sisters force their hand and the image of that man is put out into the wider area, and it's only 2 days later that Stephen Port is arrested. The police had been working on this for 16 months. Two sisters had figured it out in 2 weeks. Stephen Port is arrested at his flat on the 15th of October 2015 after being recognised on the footage. Bizarrely, Port has a new look. No longer has the wig to help make him look any younger.
Anthony was found slumped outside your address with a large amount of GHB in his system. The other 3 men we've been discussing were all found over by the wall area of the Abbey, you can see on the map. Again, all of them were slumped against the wall with a large amount of GHB in their body. Can you account for that at all?
No, I can't.
Stephen, did you have any involvement in his death?
I did not know, no.
Did you kill Jack Taylor?
Did not know.
This is serious.
Yes, I know.
Okay. It's really important that you tell us the absolute truth.
On the 4th of October 2016, the trial begins. The police had never looked at Port's laptop, which would have seen searches that revealed Stephen's lifestyle. The laptop proves valuable, with searches on drugging and abusing boys. 8 other boys who had been lured to Port's house and survived came to court, saying how they had been drugged and assaulted after linking with Port through Grindr and being given GHB. Port's phone has over 80 videos that he'd filmed of unconscious men in his house. The boys would recall drinking and finding white sludge in the bottom of their glass. Falling unconscious, they would wake, their clothes gone, and Port assaulting them. They survived only due to the amount of GHB being less than those who died. DNA testing was finally done on the GHB bottles found on the victims, plus the bedsheet and suicide note of Daniel Whitworth. These revealed the DNA of Stephen Port. And on 23rd of November 2016, Port is found guilty of the murders, plus multiple other charges, and given a whole life sentence. But he'd gotten away with the murders because he'd been allowed to. He wasn't some master criminal. It's just that the police investigating it were worse. Okay guys, so that is the story of Anthony, of Jack, of Gabriel and of Daniel. The 4 lives of victims of the Grindr killer Stephen Port, who is spending the rest of his life behind bars. All 4 of those people had life ahead of them that they no longer have. And the parents have got to live with that, the friends and family have got to live with that. And it's a tragedy, and a lot of it could have been avoided if the police had actually tried to piece those dots together. And there's no getting away from the fact there was a lot of homophobia involved with this. Why have I covered this? Well, This weekend marks 10 years since Anthony passed, and over the coming months obviously it will reach a decade of the other victims. It's a story that affected me years ago, and it's a story that will not be forgotten, and it's important to never forget those people and the parents and the friends. Are going to hit those anniversaries this year knowing that a decade has passed, and yeah, they're never going to be forgotten at all. Also, it's a personal one. Tom, who is on this channel often with me, he won't be watching this. He knew Anthony from the time back in Hull. It would have been the same age. And I know how difficult even he has found it, and he wasn't even a close friend. It was just somebody he met occasionally. Yeah, a tough one. But rest in peace to the four of you. To the family and friends, I hope you find peace over time. To the victims of Port who survived yet were scarred forever perhaps, I hope you find your peace and know that your story is also not forgotten. Take care, guys. From Danny and I. We'll see you next time.